All right, welcome back, everyone. Let's jump right into this. Today, we're diving into a really fantastic explainer based on some source material that is, frankly, going to completely change how you look at reading. We're talking about the lexical alchemy of fiction. If you're someone who loves to learn efficiently, or you're always on the hunt for ways to expand your mind, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to unpack how the simple act of reading fiction, something we usually just brush off as pure entertainment, actually secretly and systematically makes us smarter. So let's map out the incredible cognitive transformation that kicks in when you just get totally lost in a good book. So think about this for a second. Have you ever missed a character after finishing a book? You know the feeling, right? You close the back cover, you set the book down, and boom, there's this very real, palpable sense of loss. It's kind of nostalgic. You literally feel like you're leaving close friends behind in a world you can't visit anymore. Well, it turns out this isn't just you being overly sentimental. No way. This universal feeling, this deep emotional investment we make in people who literally do not exist, is actually the absolute key to the cognitive upgrade we're talking about today. It's the exact engine driving the learning process we're about to explore. Section 1. The Magic of Lexical Alchemy and Unlocking Hidden Cognitive Benefits. Okay, so we're moving totally away from the idea that reading fiction is just a passive escape. Instead, it's an active alchemical process for your brain. Our source material frames this entire cognitive shift with a brilliantly simple concept: how to get smart while having friends in books. I just love that phrasing, having friends in books. It totally captures the dual nature of what happens when we read deeply. You're actually doing some really heavy lifting cognitively, getting smarter, building vocabulary, decoding complex context, but you're doing it under the totally delightful disguise of just hanging out with friends. It perfectly masks the hard work of learning behind the pure pleasure of companionship. Let's formally define what we're actually looking at here. Lexical alchemy is the process of transforming fictional character bonds into real-world vocabulary. Think about historical alchemy, right? The whole attempt to turn base metals into gold. Well, in this case, the base element is the emotional bond you form with a character who is literally just made of ink and paper. And the gold, the incredibly valuable end product, is your enhanced intelligence and expanded vocabulary. The emotion you feel is basically the heat, the magical catalyst that locks that transformation permanently into your brain. The emotion you feel is basically the heat, the magical catalyst that locks that transformation permanently into your brain. Section 2. Making Friends in Fiction, the Emotional Bond on the Page. We really need to look under the hood of this premise. How exactly are we forming these parasocial relationships, and why do they even matter for our intelligence? The absolute crucial takeaway is this: we don't just read words, we bond with companions. When you read a really well-crafted piece of fiction, your brain is pulling off an incredible magic trick. It's not just decoding symbols on a page, it is actively simulating a social reality. You start treating these characters as real entities. You worry for them, you root for them, you get super frustrated when they make bad choices, and that emotional investment, that is the essential first ingredient for this whole alchemy to work. Empathy is the glue here. If you don't care about the companion you're spending time with on the page, your brain simply is not going to retain the new information they bring to the table. And this brings us to a massive, game-changing difference between how we're usually taught to learn and how our brains actually want to learn. Traditional learning relies heavily on rote memorization and flashcards. We all know the drill. It's trying to hammer isolated words and definitions into your short-term memory by sheer brute force. It's painful, it's boring, and let's be real, it's pretty much forgotten the second the test is over. Lexical alchemy, on the other hand, is contextual learning driven entirely by emotional investment. You aren't learning a word in a vacuum. You're learning a word because a character you deeply care about just dropped it in a moment of incredibly high stakes or intense vulnerability. The emotional weight of that specific scene permanently anchors the new vocabulary right into your mind. It's literally effortless absorption. Section 3. How we get smart. Turning empathy into intelligence. So we've got the emotional setup down, the having friends part of the equation. Now let's dive directly into the cognitive transformation itself and break this alchemy down step by step. Let's look at your brain on fiction. Step 1, you meet the character. You get introduced to their world, their quirks, their voice. Step 2, you form the bond. Empathy kicks in, and suddenly they're a companion. Then step 3, the magic moment. You encounter a totally new word in context. Maybe it's a really complex adjective describing their heartbreak, or a sophisticated verb they use in a tense argument. Because you're emotionally invested in that exact moment, your brain dials its focus up to 11, which leads right to step 4. You retain the vocabulary. Your brain effectively tricks itself. It literally says, hey, this piece of information is vital to understanding my friend. Therefore, I have to remember it. It completely bypasses the struggle of memorization. Ultimately, spending time with an articulate friend expands your own mind. And this just perfectly reinforces the core philosophy of what we're exploring today. Vocabulary building isn't a chore in this context. It is the totally natural, completely unavoidable byproduct of spending time with intelligent literary companions. It's just like in real life, right? You start to pick up the speech patterns, the slang, and the vocabulary of the people you hang out with the most. If you spend hours deep in conversation with a highly articulate, complex fictional character, their linguistic sophistication is absolutely going to rub off on you. You're absorbing their intellect just by being present with them. Section 4. Your next literary friendship. Approaching your next novel. Okay, so we've looked at the theory, the core quote from the source, and the step-by-step cognitive process. Now let's talk about the golden result. How does understanding lexical alchemy actually change the way you pick up a book from this moment forward? First off, seek out fiction that sparks a genuine emotional connection. Seriously, don't just read a book because it's considered a classic, if you couldn't care less about the people in it. The alchemy needs that emotional heat to actually work. Find characters you genuinely want to hang out with. Second, treat complex characters as your intellectual peers. Really engage with their dialogue and pay attention to the specific, precise words the author uses to shape their minds. Respect their intellect and let it challenge yours. And finally, just allow vocabulary acquisition to happen as a natural byproduct. Toss the flashcards in the trash. Trust the alchemical process. Trust that your empathy and your emotional investment are going to do all the heavy lifting of memory for you. And that brings us to one final, really provocative thought to wrap up today's explainer. Who is your next smart friend going to be? Which fictional companion are you going to seek out next to expand your mind, challenge your vocabulary, and ultimately make yourself smarter? I mean, your bookshelf is literally full of brilliant people just waiting to meet you. Go find them, enjoy their company, and let the lexical alchemy happen. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you on the next one.